Continuing on, so in our last video, we found our quartiles through the quartile function in Excel and the percentile function in Excel. We also talked about how we could use the percentile function to find some other things. So I'm going to go ahead and make this into a table that's a little formatted, more nice. Okay, so box plots, when we make these by hand, we use our 5-number summary. And if you remember, what's going on with these data values is quartiles divide the data set into 25% chunks. In other words, the intervals of these chunks don't have to be equally distributed. This helps us to understand how much data is within certain intervals in the distribution. So, for example, there's 25% of our guesses between 120 and 218.25. So there are 25% of our guesses between these two values. That's what Q0 and Q1 are doing, is it's separating the data to like the lowest 25%. So if we look from 120 to where 218, where that cutoff would be, kind of like in our last video, sometimes this helps me to visualize. I'm going to there we go. Okay. This is 25% of our data. So this is our, like, in between Q0 and Q1. If we continue here, because I like to color coordinate. Okay, so between Q0 and Q1 is yellow. Between Q1 and Q2, so between that value, 218.25 and 344, is the next 25% of the data. So we go from 218, or again, where that cutoff would be, up to 344, which is right here. That's where that cutoff would be. Okay, I'm going to highlight those green. Okay, then between Q2 and Q3, between 344 and 568, that is our next quartile, next set of 25% of our data. What was that? 568. Okay, so there. I'm going to highlight that yellow again. And then this last bit should be the other. So between 568 through our max. Okay, so if I back up here, again, notice that this has divided the data into 25% chunks. This is a quarter of the data. 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 Okay, remember with box plots and our 5-number summary, what we call the middle 50% of our data. So the middle 50% would be between Q1 and Q3. So between 218 and that 344. So I'm going to unhighlight these now so that I can show you another point. Okay, so between 218 and, sorry, I said 344 a minute ago, between Q1 and Q3, so 218 and then 568 here. This is the middle 50% of our data. So notice, like, it visually hopefully also looks like that to you. We have 50% of the data between these in this green, and then 25% of the data here, which is less than that middle 50%, and this 25%, which is greater than the middle 55%. This area here we have learned is called the interquartile range. So the range itself is actually a number, but the interquartile range we can think of as the range of values between Q1 and Q3. And it's the middle 50% of our data. So I'm going to come over here and calculate our IQR, our interquartile range. So our interquartile range is Q3 minus Q1. So that means basically guesses varied, the middle 50% of our data, those guesses varied by about 350 candy corns, if that makes sense. So the lower part of our interquartile range is 220. The higher part of our interquartile range is 565. And so again, that range is about 350 candy corns. Okay, so that's our IQR. All right, so let's go ahead and make a box plot here. One way we can do this, so I'll say without doing it by drawing it. Excel is very fancy. We can highlight all of our data. And this will be our first graph we're doing together. So we insert, and then over here we see a section called charts. So this entire thing opens up how many charts we have as options. If we click on this, it also brings it up as another window, and you can see the list here of all of our charts. So notice we have a box and whisker plot. This is what we want. So a box plot, also known as a box and whisker plot. So we can click on that and hit OK. And notice it gives us a vertical one. We've learned that we can see box plots as vertical or as horizontal. I'm going to squish it this way. Okay. Chart title, I'm going to go ahead and call that candy corn guesses. I should, if you highlight that title cell, usually I think it adds the caps lock. I think if you were to highlight this with the entire data, I do think that auto populates that into that title. Okay, so this is our data as a box plot. I will point out here, since this is our first graph, our first, I guess, image that we're doing together, you can format a lot of this. So if you right click, you can change the different colors here. You can change kind of even the format of lines. So if you click on these lines, you can right click and format grid lines, format axes. So we can kind of jump into this throughout all of our videos, but the main thing I wanted to point out here is because it's really hard to see where this Q2 line is, I'm going to go ahead and change our fill to some lighter color so that we can actually see that. Okay. So now here, in fact, I'm going to color coordinate. So far in our data set over there, we have that the interquartile and range is that green. So I'm going to keep it. So this green section corresponds to these green values here. And we see that they range from 220, so this is right above 200, and it goes all the way up to a little bit below 600, which is this one. And as a reminder, our box plot is plotting our 5-number summary. So if we come in here, this would be our minimum, or Q0. This one is Q1, Q2, Q3. This, careful here, is not Q4. So this one up here is our Q4. This is our maximum. If you remember, we learned about box plots. What we do is make these ends here where the whiskers end. We make this at the furthest. We will take Q3 and add 1.5 IQRs. So that's how we come up with our range of usual values, is we find Q3 and add 1.5 IQRs, and then to find the lower bound of that range of usual values, we take Q1 and subtract that amount. What's going on here is that our Q1 minus 1.5, I'm going to move myself, IQRs, includes the entire data set. So that's pointing out that we don't have any outliers over here. So remember, we've also learned that when we have a dot up here like this, that means it was outside of this range. So this range is our range of usual values. Values that are outside of that range are considered outliers. Okay. So the main point of this video was to show you how to make a box plot. And then in the next video, because we're hitting 9 minutes already, in the next video we're going to start making some other things like histograms, looking at bin width. So exciting. Okay, thank you. See you soon.